And what's really important is that we have the EU 27, of course, but the other 10 countries are also very much affected by what's decided in Brussels, and that's because these countries vote in bloc. Our mission is for promoting and hunting conservation in Europe, and our vision is for a Europe rich in biodiversity and hunting opportunities. Here's our team. We have 16 staff. A couple of them are here today, Louis, Guillaume, and we were working in the context of conservation, legal affairs, public affairs, communication. How does European policy affect hunting? I think the next slide is even better. About 80% of the rules and regulations affecting hunting and conservation are coming from Brussels at the national level. So when you think about your firearm, the categories of firearms you can have, the magazine size, what you can put into your firearm in terms of ammunition. If you think about the birds you can hunt, when you can hunt them, and in the future, whether they're even going to be allowed to be hunted. Animal welfare, we have a new proposal to deal with a wide range of activities affecting hunting dogs, transportation, use of certain equipment. The wider environment affects the status of our game. The reason why we have quite a healthy ungulate population in Europe is because of our farming policy. It's produced lots of food for these animals. At the same time, the reason why we have a major problem with small wild game is because of biodiversity loss. And we're working hard also to push a big agenda for better conservation within farming policy and restoration policy. To give some examples of when things go right and when things go wrong in Brussels, we have a very diverse Europe, and diversity is one of our greatest strengths. Often the greatest challenge is when we think about harmonization. We have some really nice things from Brussels, like the European Firearms Pass. Hunters can move freely around Europe. This was a FACE idea many years ago. And we also have some problems. I'll give large carnivores as one example. Latvia, really nice situation with a very healthy lynx population and a very small management. Previously deemed to be best practice by the European Commission. The way things have gone, they have opened a case against Latvia saying this doesn't fit with the current legal framework. FACE and many others have been on the topic of large carnivores for a long time. There's a big challenge with the return of the wolf and the livestock farming sector. There's been 10 years of pressure coming from the livestock sector, Kopo Kojeka, and FACE to call for a more pragmatic, a more flexible framework. Here's some of the activities we do that are more open. An open letter to the President of the European Commission in November, calling for movement, in particular on the wolf. And now we have something quite unique. We have a proposal to change the status of the wolf under the Berne Convention, and hopefully we can get a positive vote at the EU level. And this will mean in certain countries like Finland, where it's very difficult to manage the wolf because of its protection status, we can move to a more pragmatic system. Also for Germany, Germany has enlisted the wolf as being favorable conservation status. In 5 and 10 years, we will need a much more pragmatic situation for wolf management. This is something we've worked hard on, but we need to do a lot of work. We need to ensure 27 EU member states vote to support this, and then we need to make sure all of our 49 countries, including 37 FACE members, persuade the governments to support this. In many cases, we can have policy that we can support from the outset. Phasing out lead shot over wetlands is an example. We've had a position for 20 years. 24 EU member states made rules on this in accordance with national conditions, and then Brussels regulated on this in a way that was highly confusing. What is a wetland? How is a wetland defined? Can you carry lead shot around wetlands with a buffer zone of 100 meters? We corrected a lot of issues here, but it's an example of something where we found there wasn't a good understanding of the practicalities on the ground. Now this law is in place, there's a diverse approach to implementing this. I should add, we have some of our colleagues from the ammunition sector here. We are facing a full ban on all lead in all ammunition. This is a train on a destination that will finish in a lead ban, there's no question. The Commission hasn't published its legal proposal for over a year now, and that's because there's greater challenges and priorities in Europe. There's a huge push to ramp up ammunition production, and many of the ammunition manufacturers manufacture both civilian and military, and now isn't a good time for a full ban on all lead in all ammunition. Here's another nice example of how we fixed a problem that wasn't based on the evidence. We have a new category of strictly protected areas covering 10% of the EU's land. Out of nowhere, we faced a ban on hunting and fishing. But we could fix this just about with our members working closely in the capitals and making sure they knew exactly what was happening. And when it came to the final decision, we have this removed. But things are not going to be perfect, and there's more work to be done. We have a lot of frustration within some members about taking legal action. Regional hunting practices are one example of kind of a systematic approach to end these activities, which are very important, particularly for the south of Europe. And then we have some infringements for the first time affecting ordinary bird hunting that are really important. And we sometimes ask a question here. For example, the Commission has opened a legal infringement against France and Spain for the conservation and alleged unsustainable hunting of turtle dove. And we wonder, why isn't the Commission interested in the Netherlands, Belgium, United Kingdom and Germany? Is it okay to lose 90% of your birds? But when you're hunting them and you're not doing too bad with a very large population, why is this a big problem? So this is the type of frustration that sometimes we see. We have an entirely new approach to bird hunting. This has been ongoing for the last 6 months. In the next couple of months we will have more clarity on this. I won't get into the technicalities. We have 80 birds that are huntable. 33 of them are doing badly. These are going to be put into different categories depending on their status. We may face problems. We've already identified some problem species. We're not afraid of this if we're taking a science-based approach. We are afraid if someone is pushing a very precautionary approach and calling for blanket hunting bans. The challenge with our birds and our brown hare and our rabbit is biodiversity loss. And here we have a big problem. The main driver is our farming policy, really good at producing food, but not good at delivering for biodiversity. So we're also working hard. Today within our board, we're discussing a new position for the next Common Agricultural Policy. We also have a new law on nature restoration ahead of us. So this is something really important for our work. Unless we fix this biodiversity problem, we have major problems for small game hunting. Anything that's really dependent on the status of nature in Europe is doing badly. We see this with our migratory birds. Thankfully, the status of many of our migratory birds at the flyway level is fine. But when we look at the EU breeding status, there we have problems. And that's because nature isn't doing well. And this is a challenge. Many member states, I can see folks from Ireland here, they lost 4 huntable birds in recent months, and in many other countries. It's not a problem with hunting, it's a problem with biodiversity loss, but the first target is hunting. And our members are really challenged with these problems at the moment, combined with other issues. In some cases, you have to depend on releasing game birds, but we have a new challenge with avian influenza and calling for bans on releasing game birds in many countries. Even trying to save the hare and the rabbit from hunting, we are in a bad way when it comes to our biodiversity. So this is a big priority for FACE. Just last week, we did something very interesting. There's a domino effect in many EU member states of having bans on the importation of hunting trophies. We see it in the UK, we see it in France, a debate today in the French Parliament. We've seen it in Finland, sort of fixed. We've seen it in the Netherlands. And this is a challenge. It's a challenge because, again, pure ideology, not supported by the science, and the major claims by our opponents is that society doesn't like this. So we went and we measured acceptance of keeping of hunting trophies, and only 23% of people oppose this. So not only do we have the science on board, we also have society on board. And this is a really nice project we did with our partners in recent days. We also have some really interesting things happening in Europe in terms of trends. Good to see Germany increasing the number of hunters. Other parts of Europe, also some very interesting trends. Just looking at the north of Finland, I think it's 40% of people taking the hunting license are women, which is really good. Also a big increase in Germany. So we have some really interesting things happening. Also in Norway, they benefited from a nice increase in membership. And we look at what's happening here, often during COVID, but in general in life, especially with the younger generation, they want the outdoors, they want good food, they want exercise, they want their mental well-being in good shape. You can get all of this from hunting. So we have some important opportunities if we can communicate effectively going forward. We're always talking about the link between hunting and conservation, and this is something we focus on a lot. We have a biodiversity manifesto, we have 500 plus projects. When we face the ban on hunting in strictly protected areas, we could very quickly show that hunters are a force for good in protected areas. They're managing habitats, they're involved in nest protection, they're controlling invasive alien species. So this data is really important, and we're building this for the last decade. You can see a lot of this on biodiversitymanifesto.com. What's also really important, it was mentioned by Torbjörn and Sabine, is our work with the wider hunting sector, and it's really good to have some of our patrons here, and this is a huge contribution to our work, and this is an investment into a strong future for hunting and conservation in Europe, and it's really good to have so many patrons here. I can see some of you in the room. I don't want to name some, but I can see Blazer, I can see Aimpoint, and I can see some others. So we really appreciate your support. And this program is always open. It's almost like a corporate responsibility to buy into us, because this is really where many of the problems come at the Brussels level. So feel free to talk to us. And if anyone's interested, you can talk to our president. We have a foundation as well where we are doing some nice stuff, especially on social acceptance of hunting.